All right, welcome. I'm happy to see so many people here. The room's packed. So today we're going to talk about student drive coaching. Now, I hope all of you are students, because if any of you are in your 20s, then man. But even if you're a mentor, the things I'm going to talk about today are general drive coaching from a student perspective, so they'll be relevant no matter what. The goal is that by the end of this presentation, you have concrete tools you can use to be the best student drive coach for your team in Rebuilt. So to get started, just a quick question. Raise your hand if you want to be, have been, or currently are a drive coach for your team. All right, great. So we have people here who are going to take something away from this. Some people won't.
I'm here with the
All right, so a bit about me. My name is Domenick. I'm going into my second year as drive coach on my team, 6911. I've been a 4-year member. I've been on this software, design, and build sub-teams. So I put a lot of the knowledge that I have come across in those sub-teams into use behind the glass. I've won matches because of good calls. I've lost matches because of really bad calls. Every do and every don't today is coming from my experience throughout Reefscape, because that's really the only way to learn as a drive coach. So I wasn't actually planned to be our primary drive coach when we started the season, but a couple matches into our first regional at Hudson Valley, we were struggling pretty heavily with the drive team, and the team decided, hey, we need to make a change. We're going to try putting you in there. I was our scouting and strategy head. They figured that I could translate that better to coaching, since it was already something I was managing. So I would be in that role for the remainder of the season. It was very abrupt. I really had no time to prepare. I had never drive coached in my life before. And there were a lot of growing pains. But by the end of the season, I felt very confident in my abilities, just through so many trial and error experiences I had at regionals. And a bit more about our team. We were founded in 2017, and our first year competing was 2018 in Power Up. We're in Orangetown, New York, which if any of you have ever been to the Palisades Mall, we're right around that. Or if you know the Tappan Zee Bridge, which is technically called the Cuomo Bridge now, where that bridge lands, that's our town. We won the Finger Lakes Regional last year, and we're currently top 20 in New York on Statistics. So I'd like to just, before we get into anything else, define the responsibilities of the drive coach. These can be different from team to team. No drive team is the same. No driver and operator are the same. You will have to morph the position to fit your mold. But generally, drive coaches, they need to communicate. They need to keep the entire alliance aligned with the strategy, track all 6 robots on the field. I feel the biggest thing a drive coach has to do is know when to pivot, and additionally communicate with FTAs and refs when you need to. I see a lot of teams that will have other members handle that. I think it's important for the drive coach to do so. A lot of times when you're talking to FTAs or refs, that's about information that's relevant to an upcoming match that your drive team is going to be in. The most important thing you can do when it comes to translating knowledge and information on a drive team is reduce the amount of points of failure. Just like a robot, less mechanism, less motors. Same thing goes for information transfer. If all of your knowledge is going through your drive coach, then that's less people that need to inform your drivers. That's less people that can slip up and make a mistake. And I'd also like to talk a bit about the role of a coach. I like to think of the coach as a bridge. You're really not commanding anyone on the field. You are directing your drive team, but truthfully, you have very little influence on what is currently happening in the match. What you do have influence on is what will happen in the match. A lot of drive coaches who struggle have the mindset of, I'm in the match right now, this is what's happening, and I need to change it. You can't change the present, and if you try to, you're going to fail, you're going to be behind. So adapt from the match. The current state of the match controls you and your response. You have to bridge the gap between strategy and your drivers, bridge the gap between scouting and strategy, and bridge the gap between alliance partners and yourself. This is the $1 million question. What makes a great student drive coach? In my opinion, the #1 trait a great student drive coach, and really any drive coach needs, is clear and concise communication. So communication is an extremely important aspect of drive coaching. Many people don't understand what it means to be a great communicator. So we're going to get a bit into that. Now, that's not supposed to be there. All right. This is my best advice on communicating. I did not know much of this going in, as you just saw. #1, when you're coaching a match, I like to think of it as being on the phone with your driver and operator. Because if you're like me and you like to talk with your hands, or emote, that doesn't work when the two people you're communicating with are standing in front of you and facing away from you. So, pretend you're on the phone. However, if you're like Dan over here, you might yap a lot. Dan is a big yapper. Don't be like Dan. What you do want to do is keep your words clear and concise. Your driver is currently focusing on probably a bunch of different things, which I can't speak to as not a driver, but they're not focusing on the 3-paragraph novel that you just told them, which can be said by saying, score in the close face, right? Another thing, useless words. You really want to optimize your economy of words. Never ask your driver a question. Dude, that defender's killing us. Do you think we should swap stations? They're not going to answer. All right? You are the primary decision maker of your team behind the glass. Never ask them a question, at least not in that format. This is the type of questions you could ask your driver. Does your driver know more about the robot? Maybe it looks like the robot's freaking out. Do we need to e-stop? You don't know if the driver has control or not. If they don't have control, you want to e-stop. If they do have control, you don't. That's the type of questions you should be asking. Never ask strategy-related ones. Additionally, don't call out scoring. And what I mean by that is, or at least not later into the season, if you're in a routine match where everything's going to plan and in line with the match strategy, you never need to tell your driver and operator what to do if you've had a few matches under the belt. All it does is create more confusion. This could change if your driver really does need the call out, but maybe your operator could do that. At the end of the day, your driver in your head, at least for my team, once he has a choral, if we're going according to the strategy, he knows where he's going to score. And if I call that out and I slip up and I forget where to score, now there's confusion. That might slow you down a tiny bit, but think about rescape. Think about how many cycles robots are doing. If you have 1 second added to your cycle time, you lose 3 to 4 cycles. That loses a match. So I'm going to play a match right here. Not a match, but a clip of a match. I'm going to play it twice, just so you all can see what happens. Focus on the yellow robot's arm. And I would just like to hear what you would have done as a drive coach to potentially prevent this from happening.
Oh no.
All right, well, we'll do a little playback. All right, so imagine you are the drive coach of the team in blue, 254. Not in this moment, but in this moment, where should
out of your community zone.
Exactly. You want to be looking where you're going, not where your robot is. Now, if we look at the drive coach, these guys are not 254, that's 2056. The robot's dead over there. That's what they're looking at. It's kind of hard to see, but what the drive coach here is looking at, if I hit spacebar one more time and it goes to the next slide, I'm going to crash out. What the drive coach here is looking at is his robot as it's moving. Your driver's looking at that. Your driver can move out of the way of anything he sees. You want to be looking at where your robot's going if you're coaching your robot right now. That could have prevented this, which was an elimination match which they lost, and I believe one of the strongest alliances in championship history went down in 2. So that's that. Fuck. Hold up. There we go. All right, a bit more about being a student drive coach. Real quick, what differences do you guys think there is between a student and mentor drive coach?
mentor drive coaches are going to have like more authority, a lot of conversations, they can kind of enforce some stuff. Student drive coaches don't have the ability to do.
Agreed. What's up?
I think like my experience has been like during pre-matching. I feel like when a mentor says something, it's like as he said, the authority. It's very easy for them to kind of control what's happening. Whereas if a student says it, it's very easy for them to interrupt you or for them to post something alternative rather than if the mentor said it. There's a power dynamic.
Yes, 100%. We're going to talk more about that later. In my opinion, this is what really defines being a student drive coach. At least for me, when I first entered the position, I had this thought that I was sort of a token, as in someone where my team could say, we have a student behind the glass. I was very new to drive coaching. I didn't know the drive team dynamics on my team. And it's important to understand that that's not what you are. As a student drive coach, you are the primary decision maker for your team during a match. You need to be confident in your choices. If you doubt yourself once, that's okay. But if it's the same thing again, don't second guess. If you know something works, stick with it. You're going to handle the largest burden and the most stress out of anyone on the drive team. Every time anyone on the drive team makes a mistake, it is your responsibility to carry that burden and take your responsibility for them because you're the leader of the drive team. And you're going to do that while being younger than most coaches. You're going to need to work with adults, whether they're mentors, referees, other coaches. And a lot of times, especially other coaches, this isn't a generalization, but there are many times where you're going to be underestimated by people because you're a student. You can never let it get to you. Just prove them wrong through your actions. This is, in my opinion, the end goal of what a successful student drive coach looks like. Other teams should be really reaching out and wanting to work with you. Mentors and coaches on your team should feel confident that they can trust your judgment. And most importantly, the people on your drive team should feel calmer when you're behind the glass. So we're going to talk a bit about best practices, but before we get to that, I want to really talk about what your role and responsibilities as a drive coach are throughout an event. Or not throughout an event, but before, during, and after an event. Before an event, doing your homework. You need to know your robot. You need to know it well. By the time you're in your event, even if you're not a mechanical or design member or software member, you need to know what breaks us. What can we do really well? What if we do this, is there a chance of us breaking? For us, specifically, I didn't know going into my first event, like I said, it was an abrupt change, that if both our coral and algae modes were turned off on the drive controller, the robot would just break every single time. And there were multiple matches where that happened at our first competition. And it wasn't until I took the initiative and asked, hey, do we know why that's happening, that I got the answer. People aren't going to seek out and come to you. Well, not always. They're not always going to come to you and say, hey, if both these things on the driver's station are red, our robot's going to break. You need to ask the questions. If your robot breaks, talk to people who know about it more than you do. Talk to your build lead, your software lead, your design lead. Figure out why it's happening. Additionally, coordinate with your scouting lead. You don't need to know the basis of every single robot at the competition, but what you should know is standout robots. Who's likely to play defense on us and what might their tendencies be? Some of that information can be saved for pre-match. You never know if you're going to play a match with them. Other information, though, might not be. Say a year ago, your scouting lead learned that X team has poor team culture and their drive coach yells at other students behind the glass in anger. You're going to want to tell your driver and operator about that, because if I'm a driver and I'm getting yelled at by an adult coach of another team out of the blue, I'm going to feel bad about myself. And the most important thing as a drive coach is keeping your drive team's morale high. Additionally, in my opinion, drive coaches should be at pre-match strat meetings. That can change depending on your team structure. Sometimes you don't want to overload your coach with information. If you have people that can do that for them, that's great. But it's important to know what questions you're going to be asking. I think the most important question to start off with at a pre-match strat meeting is, what are you guys good at? Your strategy should always revolve around 3 robots in the alliance. Before a match, more about pre-match strat. Introduce yourself. Be sociable. Be friendly. People want to give more information to someone who's enjoyable to talk to. What I mean by extract information, that sounds a little creepy. But what I mean by it is learn about the other teams. Build trust with other teams at your events to the point where they'll tell you something that they might not be comfortable doing with. That's why I think it's so important to lead off with that question. If you lead off a pre-match strat meeting by saying, "Hi, we're 6911, we're going to take all the L4 coral." Even if your robot is no doubt the best robot for that task, the gesture of asking that question of what are you guys good at before you say what you're good at shows that you care about the other robots on your alliance. Define the win condition. What's going to win you this match? You always want to win the match. Most ranking points in quals, in playoffs, obviously. Winning. Define what wins you the match. Is it being able to move around a defender? Do they have a really good defender? Do you need to learn how to get around them? Because that's what the rest of your strategy meeting should be based around, achieving the win condition. Assign roles to each robot. Even if you have 3 well-rounded robots, there's only so many tasks on the field, and if all 3 robots try to tackle the same exact tasks, you're going to get in each other's way. And finally, develop contingency plans. These don't need to be something that you tell to your driver, but they are something that you need to keep in the back of your head. And by don't tell, obviously tell them the basics, don't give them the specifics. But understand contingency plans. Things won't go to plan. How do you adapt? How do you overcome difficulties that arise? What if X robot breaks? Maybe they're the most consistent robot at the event. If they're the most consistent robot at the event, I definitely want to know what would happen if they broke in our match. Because our entire strategy is definitely going to revolve around them working. And going back to what you talked about, or what you both talked about, adult coaches and mentors, not always, and honestly with my experiences, not too often, but there will be times where they'll try to dominate a strat meeting and intimidate students. My best piece of advice is to not directly disagree with them. More so redirect their ideas, acknowledge you heard them, say like, yeah, I get that, but I need to keep this comfortable with my driver. So instead, we're gonna go do XYZ. During a match, like I said, economy of words. The more you talk, the less valuable every word you say is. If you talk a lot, your driver stops listening and starts doing what your driver thinks is best. Now you have a miscommunication there. If you say too much to your alliance partners, start coaching them when nothing is different from the original strategy, or they're not deviating in any way, why are they going to listen to you when there's a deviation? It's just like the boy who cried wolf, really. And as a student especially, your driver is going to be your friend pretty much all the time. You need to learn how to separate it. That doesn't mean be mean, but you need to treat them as a colleague, a coworker, someone that you have to cooperate with for the match. If something funny happens and your driver starts laughing, redirect them, say, hey man, focus on the match. You probably want to laugh with them, but if you laugh with them, are you driving? Are you playing the match? No, you're not focusing on what's going on. And after a match, you want to give constructive and respectful feedback to your drive team and your alliance partners. Sometimes. That depends on your alliance partner, and that's a call you have to make after the match. But ask your drive team members, what could I have done better? That builds trust with them. Even if you think you did great, that doesn't matter. You serve your drive team members as a coach. So what could you do better for them? And remember that hindsight's 20/20. If you made a poor call and you realize it now, don't take it harshly on yourself until you think about, hey, would I have ever said anything differently with the information I had? If I second guessed myself, maybe I would take it heavy. If it was a call that I was confident in making and it just was the wrong call, in the future I won't make it again, but I'm not going to take it heavily on myself and I'm not going to let it weigh on me. So let's talk about best practices. Number one thing is emotional control. As I said, the biggest thing that you are responsible for as your drive coach is your team's morale. When you panic, your friends panic. So if you start freaking out behind the glass, your driver and operator take it as permission for them to freak out behind the glass. And if your driver and operator are freaking out in the middle of a match, they're not focused on driving. Stay optimistic always. If your driver makes a mistake, they're taking it extremely hard. Every single time. Everyone on your team wants to win. You're all there for the same goal. If you're pessimistic, if you insult your driver or even make a joke about a mistake they made that cost you a match, they're going to feel worse than they already do. So support them. The game manual. My advice is to read it fully 3 times. The first time, just read it. The second time, annotate and take notes. And the third time, review what you marked down. You might say, I have a life, I'm not going to read the game manual 3 times. That's okay. If you have a life, or don't want to read the game manual 3 times, which is fair, then my best piece of advice would be read it once, find 2 members of your strategy team or drive team or anyone on the team that you're comfortable with in completing this task and ask them to read it once as well. And then talk about what you read. That could be scalable. You could break it down into sections and have more students do this, but I wouldn't do too many. Like I talked about, people are like robots, teams are like robots, and the more points of failure you have, the more things that get lost in interpretation. Adaptability. I don't think any good drive team is defined by how they handle the best case scenario. If you look at most drive teams in FIRST Robotics, and you give them an open field with no defenders and no alliance partners to move around, and the robot works the entire match, they're nearly always going to hit their ceiling, as long as they have a bit of practice. But what happens when there is a defender? The ceiling is lowered, but oftentimes you don't meet that ceiling. And block or pin a robot. A no-go zone is on the other side of the reef by either cages. A robot could, if you're by your opponent's cages, a robot could push you into them. And if you're by your own cages, you can't get to the other station quickly. That's a no-go zone. Those aren't protected areas. And in MASH, you need to constantly watch a defender. That's why you'll see a lot of teams, a lot of Alliance 1s who have great coaches and great strategy, won't put a robot that might get 2 cycles of match on defense. And the reason for that is because when you have a robot on defense, it's your responsibility as a coach to keep an eye on them, and now you have to watch the entire field. In a game like Reefscape where you have half field cycles, that's a much larger area that you have to keep an eye on. And you have to tell their coach, not their drive team members, but their coach, when they need to pivot, how they need to pivot, when they're getting a lot of fouls on them. A lot of times they won't be watching flags, so it's your responsibility to watch flags. Tell them how to avoid it. If they're getting too many, call them back. One time we called back a robot and put them on counter defense, which is not a valuable role, but they lost about 20 points in fouls that match. Avoiding defense as a scoring robot. Defenders will have patterns. They always will. Human nature to have a pattern, and drivers are humans, unless anyone's automating defense, but don't do that. Spot patterns. If a robot really likes one station, there were many times where we would put both human players on the Alliance, assuming there were only 2 human players on the Coral stations, at the same station, because we realized that a defender only was good when the robot was lined up with their drive station. So we'll go over to the opposite side. We'll have 2 human players there and 0 human players on the other station, because we're never going to go there. Change your routes constantly, even if it doesn't make sense. Defenders are going to expect you to take the most optimal route to the reef. They're going to expect you to take the most optimal route to the station. So tell your driver, hey, go to the right, you're going to intake at the left station. And a defender sees that, and now they go to the left station. They go to the right station to try to block you. You already know you're not going there, and now you're ahead of them. They have to chase you. You get your game piece, and you get a cycle. And opportunistic plays. If defense is getting played on you, always watch the defender's pumpers. If you can push them into a protected zone, not too obviously, or tap them when they're in a protected zone, draw penalties. It's pretty simple. Information triage. What information triage is essentially balancing all of the information in a match, because there's a lot of it that you have to keep track of. I like to define for any given game, and this changes throughout the season as you coach and learn, what you always need to watch, what you sometimes need to watch, and what you should never watch. Your never watch list is normally common sense. Ignore the crowd noise, ignore disabled robots. Crowd noise comes from Tech Valley, where we had the loudest qualification alliance of all time chanting in our eardrums for 2 separate matches, and you couldn't hear yourself think. So I started tapping my driver on the shoulders. Don't listen to them. Always watch the clock. Always watch how the score is trending. Don't watch the current score. You might be up, but are they catching up? How quick are they catching up? That's what the trend is. That's what actually matters, because if there's 2 minutes left in the match, then, oh, wow, you're winning in auto in 15 seconds of teleop. You'll lose the end of the match if they're cycling faster and you have to pivot. Defender positions, if there are defenders. Nearest referees, watch their flags. You might not even realize that you're drawing a penalty, and you are. Secondary things to watch. These are conditional. Health of your opponent's top scorer. Are they having an issue? If they're having an issue and you have a robot that's not doing too much scoring, go send them to harass them. Make them really bad at scoring. Now you're going to win the match. Watch your ally positions. If one of your alliance partners, drivers and quals, is very nervous and isn't following the routing, you can't control that. You can't go over and say, hey, follow the routing. But you can change your routing to move around them. Economy of words. Like I said, long thoughts need to be compressed into short calls. My general rule of thumb is that if you were to write out something that you're saying behind the glass and you have to put a comma, it's too long. They're blocking the lane over there, trying to get around. There's no useful information in this. The driver sees that their lane is blocked if you're going to it. Try to get around. That doesn't tell them how to get around. I'm going to stop listening to my coach if I'm a driver and that's said to me. We're blocked on the near side, rotate to the far side. It's much easier to understand. If I say that while we're intaking, great. Driver hasn't seen it yet. He knows what to do. We don't even go over there. Code words. You can get fun with them. I didn't put any of our fun ones on the slide, but my favorite one was that I would scream out ex-wife if we were to go try to block an opponent's climb at the top of my lungs, which was always fun to see our alliance partners' reaction to. But have code words. They need to be predefined before an event, not before a match, so that your driver has time to memorize them. But those can help you shorten your communication a lot. If the score and time aren't critical to your plan or what you're doing right now, you should never mention them. Like I said, if you're in the bulk cycles phase, your driver doesn't need to know when there's 1 minute 30 seconds left compared to 2 minutes left. It doesn't affect them. Like I said before, the less you talk, more each word is going to matter. Team updates. Please read them. I'm asking you this because I'm going to be competing with a lot of your teams next year, and a lot of people didn't read them at Hudson Valley and then didn't put their human players on the processor, which gets you carded. Something like that is not going to seek you out. If you haven't read the team update on your team as the drive coach, I can almost guarantee you that nobody else on the team has read the team update, which means nobody knows the rules, which means you're probably going to break the rules in a coming match, which means you're going to get yellow carded, and then if you don't fix it, red carded. So I check daily, not in the off season, should clarify that. But in the season, I check daily. Every morning I wake up and I go on First Inspires and I go to the blog page and I read the latest team update. It's like my morning routine. And I update my game manual when anything changes. Never assume your alliance partners are in the know either. I don't care if I've been with the team 3 times, I'm going to tell them what the latest team update was at the start of the match. It's really annoying. But it's more annoying to lose. Team politics. This slide originally said politics. I think that this better explains what I'll be talking about. Strategy. Working with your team's scouting and strategy sub-team. Sometimes your strategy sub-team is one person, and sometimes that one person is also the drive coach. Like me. Pre-match. Define who their best scorer is. Post-match. Adapt your strategy.
Hello, StuySplash entities. So sorry to interrupt. We will finish at 4:45 today, and the building will be closing at 5.
Yeah,
When you leave, please exit through the first floor entrance where you came in. Do not exit anywhere else, or an alarm will go off. Once again, please exit through the first floor entrance where you came in. Do not exit anywhere else, or an alarm will go off. Thank you.
Now, going back to this, I'm going to say a lot of times people in first do what most teams do. And in this specific case, I do think a lot of teams have poor communication systems between their coach and their strat leads. A lot of times I've heard, your drive coach doesn't need to know all the strat. They don't need to know all of it. They need to know a lot of it. A lot of people hear that and they take it as our drive coach doesn't need to know the strat, which is a sentiment I've heard echoed way too many times. Once is too many in my opinion. Doing what most teams do can be a good idea a lot of the time, but before you copy other teams' relationships with their scouting lead and their drive coach, make sure it works for your team. This is one of those things that will vary the most in different teams. Team size, the size of your scouting and strategy team, the importance your team culture places on scouting and strategy, all those factors are going to massively change what that relationship is. If I wasn't the scouting lead, I would very much like to have access to all of our strategy software. A lot of teams drive coaches probably wouldn't. Just depends on what you as a drive coach think you need to know. And stay in constant communication. The first person you want to talk to before and after a match are the people who do your strategy. Even if you're one of them, you won't have all the ideas. So make sure you're getting their input and input from them. If you are both your drive coach and your scouting lead, it's very stressful, especially when your scouts don't like to scout, which is all scouts. Find someone you trust, preferably an upperclassman, not an underclassman, definitely not a freshman, to be a scouting second, because if you can't watch the scouts in the stands, they're not going to be scouting, they're going to be playing Brawl Stars. And then they're going to go into the Brawl of Fame. So, watch your scouts. If you can't do that because you're drive coaching, have someone watching them for you. You don't have to be a jerk about people not scouting, but you do have to redirect them. So you have data, and don't have one data point on a team over 3 competitions with them.
Yeah, we have to incentivize them.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest way to mitigate the stress. Disagreements. Especially with adults. It's going to happen a lot that you disagree with someone. Just, obviously, since I'm always right and I know everything, this is like a horrible, tragic thing. Because, man, why don't they just listen to me? But truthfully, it's important to listen to people who are disagreeing with you. There are normally a lot of good ideas. But sometimes you'll be dealing with an adult who has an idea regarding your team that is bad for your team. And they insist. At the end of the day, if you can't redirect that thought or that idea, go with it, or just say you will. Put them on your DNP and move on. I think one of my favorite quotes is, "Don't argue with an idiot because they'll drag you down to their level and beat you with experience." That is the perfect scenario for that quote. Don't bother. With refs. Refs are right. Even if they made a call that on video you can see is horrifically wrong, they're right. And if you tell them otherwise, you're going to have a ref who doesn't like you. Refs do not do one competition in the season. If you piss off a ref at your first competition and they're at your second, third, and competitions as well as Worlds, and they see a call which could have gone either way, but they don't like that one team, they're going to call against you every single time. Respectfully and calmly clarify what you could have done better. If you had a lot of penalties called on you that you don't agree with, go to the question box and figure out why they were calling it and work around it. Because it doesn't matter what you think, you're not changing their mind. You're only ever going to make them like you less if you try to. So figure out how you can avoid that being called on you and treat it as a new rule. Growth. With your drive team, you have to own pretty much every mistake you make, but not just your own, your driver's mistakes. Own them. If a mentor's upset about something that your driver did wrong, be like, well, I should have called that out. I knew it could have happened. I should have told him not to watch out for it. Even if you, in your heart of hearts, feel like there was nothing you could have done, it is your responsibility to bear that burden as the drive coach so that your driver and operator keep their respect for you and keep their trust in you. Celebrate if you win. If you win a competition, if you win a match, if you lose but you did better than you've ever done before in a match, celebrate them. They did a great job. You did a great job, and nobody on your team might celebrate you, and that's sad, but you need to remember that you also did a good job, that you were the primary decision maker, and your decisions were what won that match or won that competition. But you know that. They don't need to know that. What they need to know is that they did a good job. Your driver executed the strategy. Your operator, if you have an operator, it's very quick on the inputs. Your human players never missed. Celebrate them. Celebrate what they did right. Make them feel happy and confident in themselves. With future drive coaches, have them shadow you at off-season events, if the off-season events allow. Something that you can very often do is take your phone, go to the head ref, say, my phone's in airplane mode. Can I record myself this match? They'll very often say yes. Record the matches of you coaching. Show them to your team's future coaches. Tell them what you could have done better and what you did really well. And I think the biggest thing to do is write a cheat sheet, everything you learned through experience. This is all about mimicking the same level of knowledge that a mentor coach who's been doing this for years and years and years will have. You can write that down and document it. It can be learned. So to conclude, 5 rules, 5 very basic rules. To summarize all this. Be calm. Speak concisely. Have a walk into every match, being able to explain your plan to the smallest detail. Adapt to what's going on regardless of what you said or were told before. And own your decisions. Learn loudly and make people want you to be on their lines again. I'll take questions. Anyone? Yeah?
Is there like a specific example, like an adult not agreeing with you and like pushing it?
So there are many specific examples, but I won't be listing them out of, yeah.
Just like pick one, like the most memorable maybe.
I won't name any teams, but there was a time where an adult insisted that we do L1 coral on the trough, specifically in the very back face for the entire match. We don't have an L1 at all, but they were very insistent on it. So we said, okay, and then they broke, so they weren't driving, and we just played the match normally. Anything else? Yeah?
My guy's coach is a student, but he's new this year. He's a senior, but this is his first year like coaching. He's not here obviously.
Yeah.
What should I give back? Like tell him, bring back to him as my main point?
I think the biggest thing for you to bring back to him is just to be open to change. Also study. You can study as a drive coach, which sounds crazy, but something that I've done when I needed to learn things quick between competitions was watch matches of teams with really good drive coaches, like top teams. It doesn't have to be a student. And in the middle of the match, just pause it and say, okay, I'm the drive coach. What am I going to tell my team to do next? And predict. And was it right? No. Well, what did they do? Okay, I'll do that if we ever get in that position. And just keep doing that. That was a way that I was able to improve really quickly, just the quality of my calls. Yeah?
Earlier you said you want to minimize just your drivers. That makes sense. Something I'm wondering is if you're not actively telling your driver what to do, if you just, kind of not say anything.
Yeah, there are times where there are matches I've gone through being completely silent because I've been with 2 high-performing alliance partners and the strategy all goes according to plan. I mean, that's rare you have those matches, at least for most teams. But yeah, there are times where you could be completely silent because you're an observer, and like I said, you're a bridge. So it's not your job to always be talking or directing. It's your job to take all the information of what's going on in the game, what you talked about before the game, what's happening. Take that information, and when what you need to be doing changes, be the bridge of all that information to your drive team. Yeah, what's up?
I was gonna ask, like, when in the match, right? You mentioned like there's certain things that you like watch, like primary, secondary, ignore.
Yeah.
So like in an actual match situation, like where are your eyes usually drifting? Is there like a certain pattern that you use to like look at things? Because I know like for me, like I usually have like an order, but I think there was a lot of times, especially when I was early on, where I was just looking at our own robot and trying to like micromanage.
Yeah. So what I did that too when I started off drive coaching was I was only looking at our own robot and nothing else, which my coaching wasn't too great at Hudson Valley Regional, but it didn't show because we were crip walking the entire event. So what I started doing is I'm a lifeguard, and I started thinking of the field as a pool, and every robot in the field as a patron in the pool, specifically 8-year-old boys, because they are the most likely to, I don't have any data to back this up, but out of every age, whatever, 8-year-old boys want to drown more than anyone else. They try their hardest every time. So I pretend that each robot is an 8-year-old boy in a pool, and I want to watch him like as a lifeguard. So I'll swap between all of them, and then let's get a bit deeper into the lifeguard analogy. I'm a lifeguard that's eating, which isn't allowed. I have a bag of chips. My supervisor is the clock and the drive station, which shows the clock, the RP completion, and the score. Glance over at that every few seconds once you're done doing your initial scan to make sure you don't get caught eating your chips. Yeah, of course.
Not a question, I'm using Note. That's also how FTA launches robots.
Really? Oh, that's cool.
You're all, oh no.
All right, anything else? No? Oh, what's up?
How does your drive coaching change from or how will it change this year from going from Rampage, as I know you will be competing at, and from event to event?
Well, I mean, I can't say for certain yet, but obviously I'm going to try to learn more. Whenever I work with a great team that has a reputable and great coach, I like to ask questions, lots of them after the match, before the match, at the competition. Take that advice. Obviously not automatically implement it, but maybe think about it. Maybe I could do this, maybe it would help us, maybe it wouldn't, and I wouldn't do it. I mean, I can't speak to what changes I'll make yet. I've tried out all the changes already that I wanted to make at off seasons, but I do know that I will change, and the coach I'm going to be at the end of next season is going to be very different than the coach I am right now. Anything else? All right, thank you guys very much. If you have any questions, this is my contact info. Feel free to shoot me an email or a text. Please send me a text and don't just randomly call me. And if you do send me a text, don't say hi. Especially don't say anything weird. Say you're at StuySplash or I'm going to ignore it. Yeah, we ended a bit early, so thank you all for coming. I hope you were able to gain some information, and I hope you'll all put it into use next season. Good luck.